Again, we're going to turn off all scheduled reports that impact circ and patron data after that last run on 4/27. And that's all being handled for you guys, so you don't have to do anything, but you have to know it's happening. So when you don't see things on the 28th that you're used to seeing, that's why. On the evening of the 27th, after libraries close too, we will also be working to remove the enterprise configuration settings that allow patrons to play polls, renew items, and update their My Account information. So they'll still be able to log in. They'll still be able to see their checkouts. They may not be accurate if they check things out during that offline period, but they just can't change things.
And that's only Link and Magic.
It's only Link and Magic, yes. So late on the 27th, we will do a devious thing to all of you. We will change the port number that you connect to your workflows Symphony server. And the reason we are doing that is we do not want any accidental connects to Link and to Magic Symphony during that offline period. So that's something IT is going to coordinate in getting that set. That information we will have. We will share strategically with people in your library that need to connect for checking something. But one thing I'm going to emphasize now, and Stephen will drive home later, is offline circ is not normal operations. It is abnormal. And the fact that it is abnormal means that you should designate as few workstations as possible to accommodate checkout. Have those clearly labeled for your patrons. That's where they have to go to checkout. Do not go into offline mode on any other workstations. We have red spray paint at the back of the room that you can spray paint those devices. Okay, so we can talk more about that after Stephen gives his demo. So then from 4/28 to 5/1, we're in offline circ. So you're checking items out. That's all you're doing. Okay. As Aaron keeps telling me, you know that the migration was a success if patrons can check out materials. That's what we're all about. So keep saying, but what about this? Can they check out materials? So during offline circ, they can check out materials. During that same offline period, we will have a patron lookup via web services. So those of you that want to be able to look up your patron, Rudy Host and IT have developed this program that is actually making a call to the Link and to the Magic servers, pulling back that information. So through a web interface, you'll be able to check those things. And then we see a big red dot. Okay, so 4:30 until the 5/1, when we get an all clear, that's when the re-indexing is going on. So all SWAN libraries will be in offline mode 4:30 to 5/1. On 5/1, those Link and Magic enterprise links that your patrons have bookmarked will be redirected to your SWAN URL. So Circe Dynex is doing that for us. We're providing them a list of all of the URLs. Okay? And I don't know why that says, oh yeah, update your OCLC supplier status if you haven't done so already. So you can be back in ILL provisioning mode. Here's just a quick responsibility checklist. So let's look at the library IT and staff responsibility. Turn off the self-checks. Physically power them off. Prior to going to offline, so we're talking first thing in the morning, 5:28 or 5:27. We're going to have more detailed dates and times when we request that you do this. You're going to actually, on those stations that will be using offline, you must log into the SWAN server, production server, to make sure that those offline settings and your library agency policies are correctly downloaded to the workstation. Okay, so that's real important because right now, if you use offline. Let's say Carol Stream uses offline on Magic. They can go to offline. They can choose CS. Well, unfortunately, they're going to be CSD in SWAN, so that CS might map to a totally different library than the proper library. So it's really critical when you come up in offline mode that you have your proper 3-letter agency selected as your library. So we're going to have your staff verify that those logins and those offline settings are properly used. So Lincoln Magic sysadmins have the most work in this cutoff period because they're going to have to modify those user lists, stop the scheduled reports, restrict access to reports, modify the enterprise banner, update enterprise configuration, modify Symphony port and firewalls, and update SIP2 configuration. So SWAN and Lincoln Magic sysadmins are talking and kind of, we're getting the direction from Stephen's group to make most of this happen. Okay? I guess that's good. That's easy.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Schlewitt and I'm the SWAN IT manager. And so first of all, I want to share with you a few slides that we've been sharing with your IT individuals, the IT individuals that represent your libraries. So we've actually done a series of like mini Q&A sessions for just IT staff. So we've done those online, and we did one at a library. And basically, we wanted to go over really the specifics for library IT staff, the things that we need them to do during offline, during that weekend. So a lot of this just kind of reiterates what Dawne was just saying, but just to kind of quickly go over it. So again, these are the slides that we shared with them. So the IT assignments during the tech services freeze, so April 18th through go live. For your IT people, for the technology-oriented people in your library, the big plan will be ensure that everyone is ready for offline mode and make sure that you know your internal SIP2 connections, you know how to log into that, and make sure that you know how to log into the SWAN Symphony server as well. So collect all of your credentials, make sure that you know how to get to all of those, and so that they're all prepared for that weekend. Now, obviously, that weekend is going to be the biggest thing. That is not business as usual. So there's going to be a few really important things that need to happen on that weekend for library IT staff, and that'll be ensuring that all of the logins are used, or that basically staff are able to log into offline mode. They understand that they're in offline mode, they get into it correctly. And I'm going to show you, do a quick demo on how to use offline mode, and we're going to continue to release more documentation and everything on that as we go. So they're going to assist all the library staff with any offline issues. If they're not able to resolve it, then they're going to escalate it to SWAN staff, and we can also help everyone out. And then probably the biggest part is your IT staff will need to go around and power off all of the self-checks that you may be using. Your AMH can be in offline mode as long as that's sending everything to the exceptions bin, and then the PC reservation software will remain active, and then it'll continue to authenticate as expected. So we have kind of this helpful cheat sheet of services that are available and unavailable. So specifically starting with the Symphony server, for Lincoln Magic libraries, you will continue to have access to your third-party vendor integrations. So what is that? That's your databases that are going over Easy Proxy. That's your electronic media. So things like any of your Baker and Taylor ebooks or anything like that, that will still be accessible. That'll still authenticate as expected. Now there's going to be partial access to the SIP integrated stuff, the hardware and software. So PC reservation will still authenticate. That'll still work. Print release will still work. Automated materials handler, that will work in offline, again, sending everything to the exceptions bin. And then your self-checkout, just power them off. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but mostly we want to make sure that nothing is accidentally checked out, walks out the door, and we can't account for it. So the easiest way to do it is just power off the self-checks. So then going to workflows, you're going to be running that in offline mode, and I'm going to show you the demo in just a second. So that's pretty much just partial access to checkout functions, but no access to anything else. Offline mode is really restrictive. and I'll show you just how restrictive it is. But essentially, the only thing that you're going to want to do is just check out functions. So it just circulates that, and that's it. The SWAN Symphony test server, we're going to have offline, so you won't be able to get to the testing data. And the reason that we're cutting off access to that is because we don't want any of the offline files accidentally uploaded to that server. So the same reason that we'll be cutting off access to the Lincoln Magic servers, so that while you're running offline mode, you're not accidentally sending all those circulation statistics to any of the servers that we are not accessing for that purpose. Enterprise will have full access to item records and searching, but my account features will be, a lot of them will be disabled. Item availability will be incorrect because it won't be pulling directly from the servers or won't accurately reflect what's going on the servers at the time. And then you won't have any access to place holds, renew items, or do any of the commerce functions. So that's all going to be cut off. The SWAN enterprise profiles, technically you can pull them up. The website will be there, but it'll just be kind of a shell because we won't have the patron data imported yet. We won't have any of your item data imported yet. So we're just pretty much saying no access. You know, if you go to it, then that's fine. Just nothing's going to be in there. So I would avoid using that at the time. Blue Cloud applications. So Blue Cloud Analytics, if you need to pull up any analytics or anything at the time, that will continue to work. Your report functions will continue to work. If you are expecting emails of reports or anything like that, you'll still receive those. And then we will have access to BookMine and mobile search cut off at the time. So that's a whole lot of services to go over. This will be available. So you'll essentially be looking for 3 major documents. And this also relates to them. So the 3 documents will be that service availability list, this offline guide, and then we'll also have a memo that's going to specifically tell you what you need to be doing and when. So it'll say specifically for this migration how you should be signing into offline mode. So that'll serve as kind of a 1 page of just these are the really important things you need to reference. So that memo, this offline guide, and then the service availability sheet, those are kind of the 3 things you'll be watching out for as we get closer to the migration. And I apologize, this slide is actually reflecting an older version of the workflows offline. After this session, we'll correct that, so you should still be able to use that link and it'll send you to the newest version. Everything is in there, we've added a lot of things specifically for the migration, so that's also included. We also want to make note that the offline patron lookup is currently in the works, and that's basically what Dawne was describing earlier. It's a web services tool that we're actually creating in-house. Rudy Host, my network administrator, has spent a lot of time getting this together, and it's basically there'll just be a web page that you can look up patron information. So if you do want to see if a patron is valid, if you want to look up based on their, if they bring in a state ID or something like that, you can actually look it up using this web services tool. So we're still working on it. It will be available by the time of go live. We're working out the bugs at this time. Okay, so everyone wants to see offline, right? That's the most exciting part. That's why you're all here. So we'll do a quick live demo of offline.
Need any questions so far?
Okay, so there are a lot of steps to this, and again, that memo is going to cover these steps, so you don't have to feel like you have to write them all down. We'll give you some information on how to do it as well, but I just wanted to do a live demo so you can actually see it in action. So the first thing that you're going to do to sign into offline mode is you're actually going to sign into the SWAN servers. So this is either on the end of the 27th or on the morning of the 28th. The first thing you're going to do, you're not going to be able to sign into the Link or Magic servers. You're going to have to log into the SWAN server first. And the reason that you're doing that is because it needs to grab the SWAN policies. It needs to grab the correct library name and the offline circulation functions. So I know some of the Link libraries have a client mismatch issue. Don't worry about that. That won't cause any issues with this, you're just going to sign in the same way as I'm going to show you right now. So you're going to sign into the SWAN server, and the IP address, you will actually use the host name is api.in.swanlibraries.net. Same port that you always use, the 5100. So we're going to click OK, and then I'm going to log in just using my credentials for now. The credentials that you're going to use are the credentials that you'll find in that directors portal that we were demonstrating earlier. So make sure that you have those logins ready. Any of them will work. You just need to sign into the server using valid credentials.
At this point, I need to wipe out my current Cersei customizations, don't I? I should like blank them out so that none of my link customizations come in as I log into this server. True?
So as you log into this, I believe it should grab all the toolbar access and everything that you need based on our server customization.
Will that overlay my current Cersei folder, or which one will win?
So I believe this one should win.
This one should win.
Yeah, and we'll have any specifics in that memo
Okay.
when you actually go through it. Okay, so we're signing into the SWAN server. You'll actually see the SWAN logo on the top right. And what we're going to do is, the only thing that we're going to do on the server is we're going to go to Preferences, Configuration, and this is the same page that you normally see when you log in, or in some cases you might not see it.
Do we have to do that every day?
No, you'll only have to do this one time, and then you can continue to log into offline for the rest of the weekend just the same way. So you'll just do this that one time. So while we're in the server, we're going to click on Operate in Offline Mode, and just make sure to show this window on Next Startup. And that way we can ensure every time that we're logging in, it's logging into offline mode and it's using everything correctly. Click OK. Changes will not go into effect until you restart the workstation, and we're just going to go ahead and do that right now. Close out. Open it up again, and so this is the same page. Just leave these checked as they are. Click OK. Okay, so now we're in offline mode. And it looks just like you're online, except you can't get to any of these. It'll say that you're running in offline mode, can't run these wizards. If you go to really anything, the only thing that works is this button here that says offline. So you go into that, and it gives you all the offline options. The first thing you're going to want to do, if it doesn't come up automatically, is configure your offline session. And this is, once again, it's something you only have to do once. And these settings will be saved for the entire weekend. So you're going to go to User Access. That's going to be offline. And this is based on the policies that you pulled from the SWAN server. So if you try to pull offline from the Link server or Magic server, it might not be there. So that's kind of how you'll know. So the User Access is offline. Library, select your library. Click on Wooddale today. So if I'm from Wooddale, then WDD. The current date, leave defaulted. Current time, leave defaulted. Due date, just leave it blank. And then the log directory, and this is probably more important for your IT guys, this is actually the file where it's saving all of your offline transactions. So for libraries that use something like Deep Freeze is a software tool that wipes your hard drive every time that you reboot the computer. In this case, you'll want to have Deep Freeze thawed for that weekend, or at least that directory, because it needs to write all of your offline transactions to that directory. Now, the last really important thing is, as you're doing this, you have to uncheck the Use User Delinquency file. We're not going to be using that for this purpose. We've been instructed by Cersei Dynamics to uncheck that, so we're going to go ahead and do that. And you don't have to review these sessions or these settings on each session, so you can uncheck that if you want to, or just have it as kind of a reminder so you can look them over. Click OK. And then now you can start performing any offline functions. Now, there are quite a few things that are there. You could do user registration, discharge, check-in. The only thing that you want to do for this purpose is charge checkout. That's it. Just do charge checkout. And the reason that we say that is because all of those other functions in a consortium may not work properly. So, like, for example, if you try to register a user, if that user already exists, offline does not do any checking. It doesn't know that that user already exists. So we're going to run into some problems when we go back online. Discharge check-in. If you were to check in an item that has a hold that it needs to be transited, it doesn't do any checking for that, so it won't recognize that it needs to transit the hold. Renewals. So kind of the same thing. If you renewed an item, there could be holds on it. It may not be renewable. Offline's just going to let you do it. So that's why we're saying only do checkouts, and that's it. And so for all that material that you may be accumulating over the weekend, you could put it into a bin, set it aside, and then check it back in when we're actually live.
And we are trying to disable those, so no accidents happen.
Yeah.
We haven't confirmed that works totally yet, but we're trying our best to not even let you click it.
Yeah. Yeah. Ideally, those buttons will not work. Still something that needs to be worked out. So I want to show you just the standard charge checkout function. And so what we recommend is use the barcode scanner. This is your best friend for offline. For the user ID, scan it as you normally would. Item ID, scan it as you normally would. And then the item is checked out. So that's fine. You could just close, or you could check out to a new user and move on. If you have a receipt printer hooked up, it'll print as normal. It won't include all the important information. I believe all it says is just the user ID, the item ID, and the due date. So it's just really basic, just kind of the essentials throughout this process. And now the reason that I say to use a barcode scanner, is because you can actually type anything into this. There's no validity checking whatsoever. So for user ID, we could type in Jim, and he's checking out an item book, and hit enter. Oh, well, Jim just checked out item book. Neither of those exist, but it doesn't check it. That's the point of offline. All of these transactions are occurring right in front of you, right on the computer, so it's not going back to the server to verify any of this.
Do you have to clear the top line each time?
No.
Okay.
You can scan item after item. You can fill up this whole page, and it'll just check out all of those in one look. Now, if you do happen to type something in incorrectly or scan it incorrectly, it's not the end of the world. So book checked out to user Jim. Just go ahead and move on. What's going to happen is later on when we actually process these offline transactions, it's just going to throw an error. So we actually get a list, and I'm going to show you that list. So this is actually the offline documentation that you'll have access to at the very end of it. This is what you'll see. So we send this list to all the libraries. This is the offline exception file. And it looks kind of like a mess, but essentially these are all the transactions that will process through offline. So Jim checking out book will be represented somehow in here in this offline, and it'll actually have an error. So you're not going to see every single one. You're only going to see the ones that are errors. And we'll provide this log to you after go live, and we'll certainly help everyone to understand what you're seeing. So if you have to go back and check something back out to a user, then that can be done. Or if you just need to reference and make sure that nothing's walked out of the door without having been checked out properly. So you'll have access to this offline exception log, and so that's kind of a part of the offline process. Now after you're done for the day, it's Saturday night and you're done checking things out, you can close out of workflows normally, and all these settings, all the transactions for the day will save to that computer, and then the next day you'll just bring it up as you normally would, and it'll continue to write to that file. So there's nothing special that you have to do. You can close out of workflows normally, open it up again. You can even do that during the day. It'll just continue writing to that log file. Yeah.
So with this being offline, will email receipts be possible or just printed?
They will not, only printed.
And second question, all of the statistics generated by this, will they record once we go back online as part of the April report, or will they be counted as all happening on May 1st when it goes in?
I believe all of those would be counted based on the date that they circ, but we can verify that.
Yeah, they do count on, they will use the date and time that the transaction occurred.
Oh, sure.
So they save that in the log file.
Makes sense.
So for Lincoln Magic, what that means is your April stats are going to have 27 days in Lincoln Magic and are going to have 3 days in SWAN. Convenient, isn't it?
How are the due dates being generated?
That was actually a question that came up online. When the transactions are processed, it will observe your circulation policy and apply the appropriate due dates.
Yeah, so that's another good reason to be logging into the SWAN server prior to all of this, is because it needs to grab your circulation policy so that the due dates are.
How is it, if we're offline, it's not going to database at all, how is it figuring out what the item type is to figure out what the due date should be?
So it's actually cached. When you sign into the server, that's one of the files that it grabs from the server, so your computer will always recognize what the policy should be.
So it's caching every item in the library?
No, just the policies for those specific items. So like a DVD will have a specific
Right.
circ policy. It'll remember that while
we
in
need
offline.
to clarify that because my understanding is different
How-
than Stephen's, and Sam, I think she's not in her
Right.
head. She's the
How-
expert. You tell us what's going to happen,
How does it know that
Sam.
the item is a DVD?
When the file is sent, so when you connect live, it runs against the circulation count. So you're right that the policies do get cached, but it doesn't intuitively know that a DVD to this user should circulate this way when you're in offline. So you can assign a due date here where it says alternate due date.
Right.
And that'll apply however you define it right there. But if you leave that blank, a due date won't print on the slip. But when the transactions are processed, when you connect, the correct rule would be.
Okay, so it's not going to print anything
So-
on the slip?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so as that offline file is processed, it's checking the item. What's the item type? What's the patron? What's the loan period that gets
Okay.
applied? So if you have very standard loan periods and you want to make it easier for your patrons, you could put in that date when you go into offline mode. Say that most things circulate 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You can put that in so that they're seeing that. And that date is going to override your CERC policy.
Okay.
If you just want your CERC policies to run appropriately when those transactions are processed by the system, leave it blank.
Okay, so if we do nothing, it's not going to print anything on the receipt, and then the system will figure out what the due date should be on May 1st when it runs.
Right, and then you
Right.
can tell the patron to
Okay.
check under my account in Enterprise once everything's back up.
After May 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
I apologize, I recalled that different, but yeah. Okay, so that's offline. Any other questions on offline?
One other question came up about renewals, and again, only use offline mode for new checkouts only, since it can't see the holds table. If you try to renew an item that's on hold, that can cause some issues. So new checkouts only. Don't use the renew by item or renew material.
I just had a question about when it's writing the information to the log directory, and you had said something about deep freeze. If we left deep freeze on, basically would each new day overwrite the previous day's data?
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, if you had deep freeze on, it would just wipe out that file entirely. So you'll want to have deep freeze off entirely, or if you're really great with deep freeze, you can install that directly, but our recommendation is probably just leave it on.
Another thing you may want to consider, not that this would ever happen, but remember that physical file that's on that desktop that you're doing the checkouts on, unless you're backing those out every night, there is that potential for risk of losing that file. So you may want to just say, okay, end of day, do we want to create a backup of all of these offline CERC files, just in case disaster? Not that it would happen.
Yeah, and getting into some of the more technical aspects of this file. So this file is saved per Windows user. So if you log into a Windows computer as admin, or if you log in as CERC, then it'll be saved to that user profile. But there is not an individual file for every workflow's login, because obviously you're only going to be logging into offline. So that's So it's really just dependent on the Windows user. Each Windows user will have one of those files that they'll be working off of. And then what will happen when we actually do come back online, when we're live, all you'll do is you'll sign into the SWAN server again, and all of that data will be automatically uploaded to the SWAN servers. Now, you won't see that reflected immediately. We actually have to process it through some of our overnight reports, and we're going to have a whole process for going through all of these offline files. It might take a couple days for us to bring everything back up. But by the end of the week, you'll see all those circulations for the offline files reflected in the SWAN server.
So to make it as easy on yourselves as possible, identify X amount of workstations. Those are the ones that are going to be using offline. Have them clearly labeled. Log in with one Windows user only, you know, so that you're not logging on and logging off as you have shift changes. And just go to town.
Yeah. With just checkouts. Don't go to town with anything else, just checkouts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's offline. But again, look for those 3 documents that we're going to be sending out. So the memo that'll explain specifically what you need to do, the offline documentation, and then also the service availability. And then just a couple things to wrap up really quick. So continuing the go live timeline, I'll bring my presentation back up. On the rebuild day, once again, you're going to be offline, continuing with offline, having your self-checks off. And then May 1st, you're going to start the day offline, also start with self-checks offline. And then also on May 1st, once you get the note from us that says we're all done, all systems go, we're ready for you to sign in, you're going to sign into the SWAN servers using that same designated username and PIN, and then you can bring everything back online. Now, that'll be really important for your IT staff because they're going to be moving the internal SIP2 connected devices over to the SWAN servers. So they have to do it at that time. They can actually do it on the self-check since they'll be powered off. They could do it at any time during that weekend. The AMH, same thing. As long as it's operating offline, you could technically do that early. But specifically for your PC reservation, that would need to be done pretty much on May 1st. And we've been in contact with all of your IT staff. Ian's actually been calling all of your IT staff now and testing the SIP connections, and we're over halfway through all the testing and sharing of those credentials. So we're pretty well along. And then for your external vendors, for your database vendors, for your electronic media vendors, we've been in contact with all of those, and we actually have those vendor lists available on the support site. As long as it's not a reference database vendor, which will be handled by Open Athens, everything else we pretty much we've been in contact with, so they know their SIP credentials moving forward or the web services credentials they need. So just to reiterate a few things that you'll need from SWAN, and some of these are a little bit more specific to your IT staff. So the SIP2 credentials that we're providing to your IT staff right now. You will also be able to find those credentials in the directors portal if you need to reference them at any point. Mobile Circ licensing. We actually have licenses now. So if you have any Mobile Circ devices that you've registered, we can register those today or at any time before go live or after go live. Just if it's before go live, you won't be able to use it until go live. So just keep that in mind. New enterprise URLs. So you'll be using those on your library website, and just the short form will be catalog.swanlibraries.net/3-letter code. Your Open Athens database URLs. So that's if you have a page on your library website that has all of your reference databases. Sometime after go live, this doesn't have to happen at go live, but sometime probably within the month after go live, you'll want to change all of those URLs with your Open Athens URLs, and those will be pointing to the SWAN server for proper authentication. The old ones will continue to authenticate for a little while, but you'll want to get them changed over probably in that first month. And then finally, your workflows logins. Make sure that you get those from the directors portal and you're using those. A few things that we needed from IT staff, so the SIP2 testing, having the IT staff configure the SIP2 devices. Something that we're kind of setting up in the background, but I just want to note are the alias email addresses, and you've heard that a few times, I'm sure. But basically, it's your 3-letter code at notices.swanlibraries.net. All it is a forwarding address. It forwards to 3 email addresses within your library. I believe right now we have a director designated and then 2 of your point of contact. And you'll actually have access to change that from within the SWAN support website. So there's a page where you can actually go and you can see those alias email addresses. It's in the forms, and you can see what's designated and change them right there. And then we'll also be doing in the background the change of the workflows access port. So that's everything IT. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with external vendors that are using SIP, so specifically Today's Business Solutions that's running our MyPC for us, do I need to deal with them at all to change the connection information or the authentication information, or are you doing that?
Yeah, so TBS we actually consider an internal connection, because that's actually, the connection is occurring from within your library to the Link or Magic servers, or will be the SWAN servers. So Ian has been in contact with TBS, so they are aware. Kind of the 3 of us will all work together to get all of your stations updated. So I believe TBS does have, they can remote into your server and they can make the changes there.
Yeah.
Rob has access to everything, so he's kind of aware that he's probably going to be doing a lot of remote sessions on May 1st to get you guys cut over.
So that's okay. And then the second half of that is our authentication rules. Are you? Because I talked to them a couple weeks ago about this, and they seem to have never heard anything about this. So that's why I'm asking. So I know there's some things with the user categories that we're checking in different fields for authenticating our patrons. Do I need to deal with them on reconfiguring that, or are you guys handling that?
So
You should be working with your testing captains, the people who profiled your data, you should already have been working internally in your libraries. If you have any of those that are relying on user categories that have been mapped, so work internally with your colleagues to find out what is the new mapping that's going to be in effect May 1.
I have that.
Okay. So that's something TBS will be setting up May 1 when they reconfigure, because you want to be able to use your current authentication to allow people to log into internet access during your period.
Right, but do I need to communicate those new mappings to TBS, or are you going to communicate that to TBS?
You will be communicating with them as they're working with you on that May 1 to switch you over, right, Ian?
Yeah, they should just be able to, there should be a setting in MyPC to basically look at a different part of the SIP call. So.
all right, anything else? Okay.
Kate's hacking, so I'll try and do quarterly bill. Oh, Kate's coming in. Are you?
I was watching through the crack in the door. I just thought I'd take my cough outdoors or outside the room right now. I apologize to everyone. And to those who are streaming, I'm sure they're enjoying my respiratory distress. So anyhow, I'm Kate Boyle, SWAN Member Services Manager, and I'm just going to talk briefly about quarterly billing. Because what we've asked now of the Link and Magic libraries is that there are a few things that you stop doing to facilitate quarterly billing as we move forward. So we are starting right now our April 1st reports, which will have none of your data in it. But come July 1st, our quarterly billing will capture payment transactions for lost assumed and claims lost RB and ILL, reciprocal borrowed and interlibrary loan materials. And also unpaid or unreturned lost RB ILL materials with due dates between April and June of 2017. Now, I don't anticipate there's going to be that many of those because you've had your own internal processes up till now and you've probably resolved all these issues. But we don't bill in quarterly billing for unpaid, unreturned for RBILL materials until they're 365 days. The reason for that is we were spending an inordinate amount of time flipping transactions, because as soon as we credited the library for the loss, lo and behold, the material turned up, and then we have debit, and there was a lot of back and forth. And so the Circuit Advisory Committee recommended that we change that timing to 365 days. So that's why you'll notice it says 2017. In order to include all April transactions in the quarterly billing, do not invoice another library for any of the following lost items after April 1st. So, any lost reciprocally borrowed materials, and of course, as you all know, reciprocally borrowed materials are things where the patron's library is not equal to the item library. So these are patrons that travel throughout the consortia. And one of the things that quarterly billing does, it handles all those debits and credits between the patron's home library and the item's home library. Lost ILL materials, these include intra-library loans, SWAN to SWAN, we call these direct loans sometimes, which will now include, of course, the Magic and the Link libraries, and interlibrary loan. Now, as far as interlibrary loan outside of the consortia, if we know the library outside of SWAN, we will bill it. So say someone placed a hold, one of the share libraries placed a hold on an item. That's something that we would end up billing for. The things we're not going to bill for are things that we don't necessarily have knowledge of. So after April 1st, you're going to have to continue to process invoices for items sent and received via OCLC, because we don't know what your transactions are in OCLC and who you're necessarily lending materials to or borrowing materials from. So we don't do any quarterly billing on those transactions. We're going to ask you also to continue processing invoice from non-SWAN, non-Magic, and non-Link libraries. So if you lose an item from Naperville and Naperville sends you a bill, don't assume we're going to pick that up. You're going to have to go ahead and process that as you have in the past. Of course, you're going to want to bill your user for any loss for your materials. That's all internal. That's not part of quarterly billing. You're going to bill your user using either RBILL, RBP bill in Magic, and RBP reimbursed, basically, in Link. These are billing reasons. So as long as you choose those for materials that you have paid for on behalf of your patron, we can pull that in our reports. Okay? So there is a memo that went out last week that answered any anticipated questions like, what do I do if I get a check, from a patron or a library in the interim or whatever. All that's answered in the memo. The memo is available online. If you go under events, where we have our training documentation, and go down to the ILL workshop, it's included in there. And so for any of your staff back at the libraries that deal with quarterly billing, I'm sure they've already seen this, and it presumably has answered all their questions. So that's my short and brief presentation. No? Any questions?
Any online?
No.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
The next slide.
Hi, I'm Scott, Bibliographic Services Manager. I don't actually have slides, so you just have to look at me while I'm talking. We're going to just basically rehash some of the information about the health and status of the bibliographic database in the month of May, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So May 1st is our go live, and unfortunately we're dawning on an era of messy database. We're going to have 2.6 million records, more than that, as our combined soup, when some of those are going to be twins, triplets, quadruplets. It's just going, we're like aware of this, we know this, and we just have to be prepared for it. And so just a couple things to keep in mind for that first half of May before the deduplication happens. It's going to be a bit frustrating. It's going to be a bit confusing for the patrons, but for SWAN to try to do anything about that, it's going to be like throwing a paper airplane at a hurricane. So there's no purpose in making individual merges when the deduplication is just going to take care of it. The team is going to be batten down the hatches on answering tickets. So we're asking that even for high-profile items, for the new items that you have coming in, please don't make merge requests throughout May at all. It's just, there's just better ways to deal with that process. So, I mean, and those of you who have been through cataloging trading, we showed you that option on the support site that'll generate a merge request for you as a ticket. Don't start using that. That's for much later on in our timeline. So the one thing you can do, you can move your own items around. You can use the transfer wizard. If you're the only library attached to an item and you want to merge it into something, go ahead and do it by all means. But you're not going to be able to move any other library stuff. So anything that would actually have to come up to SWAN to do centrally, that's the sort of stuff that we're just going to wait on. But use your tools to your delight. So we're going to have, what is it, May 1st through May 15th, so a little over 2 weeks of that. And then the week of May 18th I want to talk about. So again, the deduplication indexing is happening on Memorial Day, the re-indexing. So everything is hinged on that Memorial Day Monday. 18th is, we're just going back in time, so the 18th, that Monday previous, is when Dawne is going to send us our dedupe analysis, the reports that come to me and my team, and we're going to look at them to make sure, that everything went fine. It's going to isolate the records that are going to be merged. It's going to give us a list of the near misses. We've looked at all this before. We've done all our analysis during the test deduplication, so we're not going to spend a lot of time with that data, but it does come on that Monday. And this occurred to me last night, that there is a slight error in our timeline that we showed you, that technical services timeline. And I want to go over that. So I had one of those aha moments when you're trying to fall asleep and your brain's just like seeing the light, apparently. So there was a small partial technical cataloging-ish freeze on the 23rd through the 25th while the deduplication merge is actually physically happening. And it was a very small, it was the one that referred to anything that edits a title control number. So no merges and no deletions during that couple days, if you recall. That actually extends to the entire week of the 18th after all. We talked to Dawne yesterday and we were just going over timeline stuff, and our rep showed us, a timeline that he had put together, and it just dawned on me last night that was implied in that timeline. So for the week from, and we'll remind you of this in the future as it gets closer to it, but from May 18th until that Tuesday after Memorial Day, it's 1 week, just avoid merging records and avoid manually deleting records, and we will freeze the discard process centrally as well. That's all everything else you can keep doing, you can keep overlaying, you can keep adding, so it shouldn't be too much of an interruption to the workflow. I hope it won't. You probably won't even notice it, hopefully. But it is something to keep in mind, and we'll remind you when it comes up. So that is that for that week. And then our re-indexing is happening on Memorial Day, and the 26th, we're going to be able to breathe a little bit because our catalog will have shrunk back down to about 1.6 million records. And a majority of the very obvious duplicates are going to be gone. But again, just a reminder that the process is still not complete at that point, because we do have a lot of possible matches, which is going to be in the many, many thousands of things that the SWAN team needs to look at over the next few months to manually merge or not. I mean, a lot of those are going to be, properly separated. But starting that Tuesday, if you have anything that didn't get merged that's really nagging at you, like any of the new James Pattersons, any of the stuff that's really, by all means, at that point you can send it into us and we'll say, okay, because these things are being looked at, we will prioritize these merges over the list that we're slowly going down. Yes?
Scott, can you talk a little bit about the one hole in that process with titles that have items on hold?
Items on hold.
In transit.
Oh, right, of course, yes. So another thing to keep in mind with the deduplication process is that it's using the same tool in the database that we're using when we run the transfer wizard, right? And so you sometimes get those messages back. We can't merge this record because there's a copy on hold. There's an open order on it. And so those errors are going to still happen with their deduplication process. And so what Searcy Dynamics does is that it rerun anything that didn't merge the first time around. It tries again, and it tries again, and it tries again to sort of whittle down that list as orders are closed out, as transits get, resolved. So there are some things that will still be obvious duplicates for a while. It'll be a very small portion of what is, and it will be processed eventually. And there are, of course, those hangers-on that just have, for example, old serial control records that are not getting deleted ever. We'll try to do some cleanup work as well to resolve that. So that'll taper off kind of as I don't know what kind of exponential decline, I don't know what it is with the math. But so that's another thing to keep in mind. But that is going to be happening behind the scenes pretty consistently for the first month.
Scott, there's a question online. Will the freeze impact patrons' ability to place holds? Will they be notified?
Which freeze?
When there's the multiple items or issues like that, how will that impact?
Oh, no. I mean, everything should be still working. You can still place holds, and when the records are merged, those holds will transfer. It's just that the holds you place will be isolated on that one version of the bibliographic record, and it'll have to be fulfilled by an item from that particular record. But on the patron end, other than a confusing enterprise experience and doing the searching and having duplicates there shouldn't be any problem with circulation or holds. And the last bit that we have to sort of discuss is that between the deduplication occurring, like the actual removal, merging of these records, and that reindex on Memorial Day, workflows is going to get a little dicey in terms of searching, because before that reindex happens, okay, let me back up a little, because we're looking at having the actual merge process start on that Wednesday, which is the 20th. And that'll take a couple of days to process fully. And so that weekend, mostly, we're going to be looking at, without the reindex, you're going to have search results that are no longer backed up by a record. So I don't know if you've ever deleted a record on your own manually and then tried to search it right after you'll get this error message that the thing doesn't exist, even though it's showing up in search results, because as far as the index knows, the thing is still there. The thing to keep in mind is that may be a little confusing, but your data is safe, right? So if you're looking for your item and you're not finding it, if you're getting the record the message that record doesn't exist, your item is attached to another version of that title that it was duplicate to. You may need to run a search again. You may need to broaden your search terms to get it if there's any variations in titles, for example. But it is there, and you will be able to find it if you just dig a little deeper. And so you can still, edit your items and do what you need to do during that weekend. And again, this is something that once we get into that week, we'll give you a reminder of what to expect and what can and can't be done. And all these little inconveniences are unfortunately unavoidable. But we will have a good, clean catalog eventually. So that is that covered everything I need to talk about on deduplication, I think. Are there any questions on that? We'll give you an updated timeline and all of that. So the other bit that we're going to talk about, this is a Joseph joke.
In case you're wondering.
We did want to sort of give a little gesture to our new cataloging library. It's sort of a bit of a welcome gift. Just to sort of welcome you into this cataloging family here, and sort of recognize the contribution you're going to be making to the SWAN catalog, because we do really appreciate the immense amount of work that our cataloging libraries do. So we made,
I've only seen 3 catalogers here today.
Yeah,
Are there more?
There's a few.
Okay.
Aaron and
all right.
John, maybe.
Melissa, here's your shirt.
more.
There's more here? Let's go. We'll go in the back and get more. I have one for Jamie. Here you go.
Thank you.
And then I have one for Carrie. There you go.
Thank you.
We got more in the back. And actually I have some for the other libraries that aren't here today. So Rich, I'll have one for Joy. What else do we have? Carol Stream. Mary? There you are. You're welcome. And I have Sugar Grove. Mary? There you go.
Did we miss anyone? There's a mass of people. I can't see any of your faces right now. So.
And these, can you explain why these are awarded to people within the library?
Sure. Yeah, so the cataloging library member, and this maybe was not the most clear, the cataloging library membership is actually, excuse me, given at the employee level. So that's why we have specific names on these things. So it's basically the person and their staff that they're supervising. That is. So if there's ever a turnover in a library, we'll reevaluate and see who the replacement is going to be to reevaluate kind of all of our status.
So you guys can never leave.
Yeah.
Or they can take it with them when they go.
Yeah.
For those that are online that are, where's mine? We'll have the cataloging advisory meeting.
Yeah, on the
Come out,
25th, it's
and
cataloging advisory
we'll
meeting.
do more certificates at that meeting if we don't see you sooner. So congrats, everyone. Yeah, should we take a break now? Reconvene at 11? Yep. Thanks, everyone. All right, are we unmuted?
Yes.
All right, so our online folks. There's a question online before we get going. What's the question? Joseph?
Question about overdues. I understand SWAN will be taking over the overdue notices for all libraries. If our own patron needs to be billed for a lost item, do we continue to bill them ourselves?
Yes, you continue, just as I referred to in the presentation, if it's your item, your patron, you're going to go ahead and use the same processes you have in place to bill or invoice your patron. There was a what's the first part of it? Was there not two questions then?
No, not really.
Okay, then that's the answer. You continue to bill your own patrons.
But the billing notice comes from the consortium. So
Yeah.
I guess it depends on what you consider, how you define billing. You don't have to prepare the bills. Those are all going to be prepared consortium-wide. You would process the check, right, when it comes in, or the payment when it comes in, like you do now. And did I get that right?
Yeah, but if they have their own internal processes, like, 30 days after the bill goes out, you send something else. You send some kind of a reminder or an invoice or whatever you do. Whatever their own procedures are.
So the welcome kit. Hopefully you all got this, and there are some M&Ms left. Weren't a lot of M&Ms, so if you got one or two, you were fortunate. So this is all of the stuff we put in the welcome package that Brandy and Aaron and Joseph made one delivery. Did you make more than one?
One to a few.
One to a few. Okay, so they were our Goodwill ambassadors, and they enjoyed seeing all of you. They came back really excited. So we want to do more of these. Hopefully you found this information useful. Some of you did bring back material you didn't need, which we appreciate, because now we can get them to people that do need things. We had an assembly line of these packages, which could get very confusing, because if you opted out of some of the auto renewals, we're like, no, they don't get the auto renewal bookmarks or the other things. So you got a customized package for your library. On the new 19 page, there is a link to PR and communications right at the top. And if you go to the new 19 public relations page, you have until April 10th to request additional material. We have additional bookmarks of all of the varieties that were provided. We are getting additional notification brochures that should be delivered 5 to 7 business days as of yesterday. So mid of next week, we should have a lot more of those to distribute to you. I should say this is a good thing, but maybe not a good thing. It's a good thing because Brandy and I are dealing with the customized orders. We've only had one library request customization, and you can go to get an order form, and let's say that you didn't want this SWAN logo. You wanted a different logo, or you wanted to change the verbiage in any of these sections on the bookmarks. You can just take that Word document, modify it to what you want, send in a support ticket with the Word doc and with your up to two attached images, and we will customize those bookmarks for you. And the turnaround on that from the time we get it to the time we get the finished product is about a week. So if you want those, get them in so you can get those customized for your patrons. Another question, will you be charged for this stuff? No, because Link and Magic boards have approved funds to facilitate this process. So order what you need that you think your patrons would find helpful for this time period from now until go live. Another resource that we encourage you to copy, edit, paste, move into your own websites is our patron website. We want to hear stories and how you're featuring things so that we can add this to our main page on the patron website to kind of promote what's happening in your communities. But we also have a section under your library account and catalog, which is where we have placed a detailed patron frequently asked questions page, the library kind of timeline, looking at these are the things I can and can't do during particular points in time, and the library account notification process. So Lauren has produced a video for the library notifications. That's front and center, but then all of the detail that's in that brochure is also on this webpage. So if you don't want to necessarily hand out material, but you want to make this information available electronically, refer people to this page or copy any piece you want and customize it on your own website. That's perfectly fine. That's it. Any questions about PR? Now, special, Stephen just got a good piece of information he's going to demo real quick for us. Because I know you all love that really black and white and green display of the patron lookup. That's so helpful.
Yeah, so there's some breaking news from Quail Ridge, and that's Rudy just finished our beta version of the patron lookup. So I'm going to live demo it, and it's not going to work, but hopefully it works. We'll see. Okay, got that right. Okay, so you have to be logged in to see this. So we're logged into a SWAN account right now. But basically, this is the form. Really simple. You can look up last name and street number, one or the other. But just to make it easy, we'll use one of our sample patrons. Flintstone 111. And there it is.
Oh.
So yeah, as I said, this is just the beta version. So we may be adding some content to this, but for right now, you can look it up and you can verify that that is a patron, that's their barcode and everything that you need, just like that. So it actually worked. Excited about that. Yes, thank you, Rudy. So everyone, thanks to Rudy. Rudy Host, my network administrator. He's been working really hard on it, and he got it working, so it's great.
Is this tool behind any kind of authentication?
Yes.
Okay.
The support site has the standard authentication.
Status information of that patron? Is that?
Working on it. All right.
So this is utilizing the web services component within our whole Cersei Dynex Symphony stack. Are we ready to just do questions and want me to type them up again?
Yeah.
All right. Opening the floor now. For those that are online, I'm going to type in questions that come in from the floor, or if you got them online. What's that?
Yes.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, I guess we wanted to ask, throw it over to Sharon.
Sure.
So on our patron site that Dawne shared, there was St. Charles had a parade, right? And they had the inflatable swans up. So we're curious if any of you are preparing anything publicly with your patrons, or even internally, how you're kind of preparing for anything related to the Go Live. Share ideas with your colleagues, because they'll like take those ideas and maybe run with them, or anyone else doing a parade? Yeah. Yeah, Edith.
Well, I can tell you some things that we've done on the staff side. We have an internal newsletter, and so we created a SWAN edition newsletter, and each department head submitted, wrote an article to talk about the day of, any key things, the takeaways, and that actually what follows that is we'll have an all-staff meeting to answer then any questions after the article, and kind of do what you guys did today for our staff, so we make sure that everybody's comfortable. And then we have, after tomorrow, we will SWANify the library. So we've got plans for the blow up, we've got the banners out, all of the literature, and then all of our staff will be prepared to talk to our patrons about moving over and what that means to them in the upcoming days.
Yes.
We have an in-service day coming up on April 20th, and we're going to spend about an hour and a half training our staff on what enterprise is going to look like and what the changes are going to look like to them.
So that's Glen
They're
Ellen.
prepared to talk to our members about it. We also have our SWAN and banner up, and they're generating big conversations.
Okay, good.
We got a great picture too of a small child who decided to curl up in the SWAN and read, and got lucky and covered up his face. So we're going to be using that picture a lot.
Okay. I'm not doing anything.
We're not very good with computers.
Yes, in the back.
Well, is it our time to ask questions?
Let me just share
Sure.
one idea that happened when SWAN switched over in 15. We had a lot of our libraries were taking different approaches as far as how they're handling the transition. So I know, like for instance, Oak Lawn set up sort of a help desk in their lobby area, so that if there were questions that were coming up for patrons, they could just, everyone in the library could direct them there. But it was also used centrally also for if staff encountered some sort of issue, they could go there, and then they were just funneling everything as far as tickets that they needed to send to SWAN. I'm not saying you have to do it that way, but I thought it was a unique way that they were handling that they just had one station where it's like, oh, if you have trouble with this, that way they were getting all the issues and then sort of accumulating sort of the knowledge within that group. And that way it wasn't like everybody was like running around. So that was one idea that I thought was a neat one to share with you all.
Was that on Go Live Day or?
Yeah, that was like on the Go Live Day and maybe a few days afterwards. Anyone else got your banners up yet? Yeah? Generating a lot of questions? Why is it doing that? All right. Let's jump to questions. We've got a question in the back.
Yes, I do. And just a clarification on the commands after they migrate. I know that they need to be numerical right now before they migrate as much as possible. That's one of the things we're talking to patrons about now, so we can get as many of them converted to numerical pins before the migration. But once the migration is done over, and when they change their pin after that, new patrons, whomever, is it then restricted to numerical only, still, forever and ever, or later in their meeting that are
Joseph, you can jump in after I. Pins need to be numerical because of our Open Athens authentication requires numerical pins. So in the future, if that authentication method were to change to something like a user ID or a email address, that would be reviewed and addressed at that point in time. Now, the harsh reality of numeric pins is that right now Enterprise does not validate that those pins are numeric. Oh no! I'm coming through.
There's an echo in the room.
So we will be requesting as soon as possible after go live some custom work in Enterprise to enforce whatever PIN standards we come up with. But so tell your patrons your PIN must be numeric. Okay, at this point in time, they can go in Enterprise and change it to something else. Enterprise doesn't block them from that. It requires custom work to have that changed in Enterprise.
Okay. So numeric now and numeric forever. But, the reason I'm asking is because I did ask I asked my sister library this question.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was that letters are fine.
Letters are fine if you don't have to authenticate. So those patrons using letters have never used remote authentication to any of the Open Athens products. So you can address the problem now as part of migration, or you can continue to have these weird problems like, but I can get to my account, but I can't get to this.
Yeah. So it's a good clue if someone comes in and says they can't access these resources. First thing to ask somebody is, do they have an alphanumeric PIN? The other problem with alphanumeric PINs is with SVA. The phone notification. Because there's the capability, because it's a two-way communication, they can put in their PIN and renew materials that way. So if they have an alphanumeric PIN, it's not going to work on a.
So yes, right now there isn't a way for us to enforce that data field. So there's no way to have it validate that it's only numbers going in. But it's just to make clear what Dawne is saying, we're definitely going to work with Cersei Dynamics and see if we can have that field just be a numeric only field. Moving forward, I think that there's definitely sort of some longer term things that we also want to think about, which is, PINs and passwords and that interplay as far as within any of the systems and services we provide. If you go back to that map that I shared at the beginning, there's a lot of things that are touching the ILS and authenticating. So having the barcode and PIN is probably what your patrons are probably being asked the most for when they're using computer reservation or they encounter some sort of other resource. So right now, settling on the barcode and PIN and just really emphasizing that is probably the best solution right now. Yes.
And weren't all the PINs going to be changed to the last four digits of the phone number or 5/1/2018 if they were alphanumeric?
Yes, on our FAQ page.
Right.
On our FAQ page, we note that we're going to be having the alphanumeric, particularly the ones that just say change me, which we identified as a huge number of patrons just have that as their PIN, that those will be converted.
Is there a maximum number of characters?
I think it's 25.
It's 25.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Is
5/1/2018? 5/1/2018?
Yeah. If they don't have a phone number.
Or
I'm not sure.
that's in fact.
All right, I got that one. Other questions? I've got a whole panel here.
We had one online. Will tech services have access to see the wizard properties during the freeze?
The defaults, not behaviors. And what's the other one? Helpers.
Symphony what? Wizard?
Yeah. But that's true during the freeze, not during the freeze.
I don't think I got that.
Or before go live.
Properties.
Wizard properties? I had to say Symphony Wizard, because there's Wizard.
If it's before go live, it's whatever they have now. After go live is what we have. And I don't know that they would be able to affect anything by changing their wizard properties during freeze. Not sure.
Sam, Vicki, Crystal, do you guys know if when we turn, and Michael, when we turn off the access list to particular wizards, is that that's going to stop them from having access to the properties, correct? So if they don't have access to something like an item, they're not going to have access to any of its properties, correct?
I don't think so. I know a left click on the wizard will give them a message that things not authorized. So I'm not sure about the right click, but I don't think it will allow them to right click on it either.
That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So screenshots will have to be done before the links.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
They will. You have a question?
Yeah. So do SWAN libraries that are opted in to pick up anywhere honor named proxy holes from patrons that are not theirs?
So those would be the ones where I've authorized you to pick up material for me. So you've put a note in the patron record.
And they're using pickup anywhere. I would imagine though that would depend upon the charging library's policy. If they don't allow proxy pickup for their own patrons, they're not gonna allow it, I don't think, for someone, reciprocal bar. Bonnie?
Oh, I have a question. I think I missed the first part of that question, but are you talking about the behavior of having the button on the screen, access to that?
No, we're talking about proxy pickup at another library, and it is not your patron who's picking up.
What about at your library when it's not your patron that's picking up?
We're answering this question first.
I think it was this question.
I guess I was thinking it wasn't available on your home library at all.
So the question I was given was SWAN libraries that are opted in to pick up anywhere, they honor named proxy holes from patrons that aren't theirs.
We will
Any of the consultants?
ask any libraries here, SWAN existing libraries, what do you do with that? Now, when you say proxy pickups, I think this is, I could be misinformed, but I don't know of any Symphony feature that automates proxy pickup. So when you talk proxy pickup, that is a policy procedure that has been developed. It's not a system tool. So keep in mind that working with the system tool, there is no such thing as a proxy pickup in Symphony.
Right, and different libraries have different procedures that they follow in these instances. Some libraries check it out to their patron then and cancel the hold of the person that actually requested the item. Some libraries check it out to the actual original hold, and that's how it gets checked out. It never even gets checked out to the proxy person. So the procedures vary by library. I imagine the policy varies by library.
So is this question specific to this period of the go live, or like after go live and moving forward?
I'd say as you move forward.
This is a question that was given to me from the head of circulation, so think of me as a parrot right now.
Yeah. That's all right. That's why I feel like I'm trying to, is this something that's like?
I assume she means going forward, but they go live, we're just trying to get through it, but going forwards.
Yeah, because there's nothing within the software that's going to prohibit you from doing it.
Sure.
So maybe that's the answer.
And then follow-up was Bonnie's question with the button that is available to cancel the hold and check out. And again, we will not be making that button available at go live. If this is a discussion that needs to go forward to Circuit Advisory and review that policy, it is an easy button to press that has disastrous consequences if it's incorrectly pressed. So in a consortium of 97 libraries, we are very reluctant to just turn that on because the linked libraries and a few of the Magic libraries are also using that functionality right now. It was decided to turn that button off by Circuit Advisory when the initial planning for going to Cersei Dynex was reviewed, feature by feature. So that button won't be there, folks, because if that button is to reappear, it's going to have to go through Circuit Advisory to have that decision made.
You highlighted, is this the question you highlighted in the newsletter and answered? Is this also on the FAQ page?
Yes.
This is on the FAQ page, so that you also, it's not just a flat no, you provided us an option for the workaround for that.
Correct.
So there isn't
Yes.
just a no, there's like, here's
Right,
the
and
suggestion.
also we have put it on our list of things we want Cersei Dynex to implement, true proxy patron capability, where you can actually authorize a designate and have those materials checked out and have them checked out to that person via a proxy. Other ILSs do it, Cersei Dynex does not.
Just want to capture that. All right, other questions online?
They'll be promoting a bigger catalog to the patrons, letting them know there's more items in libraries. Could you go over the holds process? Their patrons keep track of where they are in line. Will their spots change when records merge?
You know, you really, I mean, they say patrons, track and follow all this, but you can never really say, and correct me if I'm wrong, consultants in the back, you can never really say this is their absolute position in this whole queue. Because there's so many things that work in that algorithm. So it's impossible for a patron, I mean, lots of patrons look and go, okay, yeah, I can see where I am, and they think it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and there I am, number 5. But it doesn't work that way. So, yeah. They could ask some staff person.
Oh,
to pick it up.
That's what we want. I think in enterprise, they can see what number they are in the whole
Yeah.
queue. They can see the number, but it's only in enterprise.
I think most everyone here understands that the whole queue is incredibly dynamic. However, when we have to explain to a patron or how they conceive of it, they think of it as just purely sequential. But we know that under certain circumstances, they can move up in the queue. So.
Yeah, and then the other part of this question was when we're merging records, what's going to happen to these holds? I don't know with certitude. I would assume they're going to be interfiled based on time date stamp.
Yeah,
that would seem logical.
That's how it works when you do it manually.
Yeah.
It's interfiling.
So.
I'll make another slide. All right, good questions. Any other online before we move on to more in the room? Nope. Yes, Kirsten.
I have a list.
A list?
I always have a list.
We ask you to submit lists in writing, please.
Well, you can have my pencil and pen writing. Status on denewing, is that going well?
Yeah, we have the report from Dynex. It works, except there's one major flaw in it, although it's a very simple flaw, so we've written back and expressed it. I haven't gotten word on the fix yet, but other than that, it does work as expected. The one thing we may need to talk to individual libraries about, and it's okay to go when I'm already going into it, so I guess it's okay to go into it. We've lost some item types in the migration, but we've retained a lot of locations. So there are a couple of your current, like a couple lines in your current setup where you have, for example, biography, item type junior biography going to juvenile biography from new, and then juvenile nonfiction went to juvenile nonfiction. If those both became new book item types, there's no way to separate them out into their separate locations. I'm going to go through and identify all of those problem areas, and we'll dialogue with you over how to resolve them when it comes time to really set that up.
So we don't need to send in new denewing worksheets. You're kind of doing that behind the scenes.
Yeah, we've got access to all of everything we need, so I'll pour through it and bring to you what is necessary.
And I know ours is weird, because it used to be all item type, and now sometimes it's item type and sometimes it's location, so.
Yeah, and there were cases, like I was doing, which library I did, but I brought in the item category 2 to sort of resolve some of those problems too. So we'll confirm with you that that's an okay thing to do, which, I mean, it resolved a lot of the problems, which was nice. So we'll work it out.
And this isn't going to be a blue cloud report. This is going to be.
No, it has to run back to the database, so it will be in workflows. And there'll be a series of reports. I mean, every library will have a number of them that will have to run. And so we're going to have to also talk about scheduling them, choosing the day of the week.
So our plan is to have those for go live. I mean, we're working on them now. We're doing the conversion between what you had and what we think the new criteria needs to be. And as Scott said, we'll be looping back with you after he gets those charts done to say, this is what we think is going to do your denewing request.
I think it's safe to say this will require some fine tuning. The number of records that it's going to pass through the system, how the system overnight processes these. The idea also that this may be something that we would want to expand beyond, of course, the libraries that are presently using this now. So
right, we will make this available to all SWAN libraries, and so that's where kind of the coordination between Scott running the numbers and seeing on a given night how many items potentially could be updated, working with Stephen and IT to see how does that impact our indexing numbers, because those have to be re-indexed. So yeah, it's a lot of balancing of those numbers. But we're going to start with the ones that we know are currently running and have those available to help us figure out what does this mean scaling to all of SWAN.
Well, we appreciate it. This is a big deal for us, so thank you. Thank you.
Did you say you do it daily or weekly?
Weekly.
Weekly.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, does it keep going?
You only get one.
Well, I can wait, but you're going to get
The last Q&A. Ask away.
Yeah, okay. So, so we're going to get new passwords, we're going to get new overrides, and we cannot control those overrides. They're just system-wide, we get what we get.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a need for an override that we identify, we'll make a new one, but they're not library specific. The logins are library specific, the overrides are not. And it'll be listed out what they are and what they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of ties into my next question that I think I asked you online, I've asked different people. Why do the catalogers get individual logins and no one else in the library has individual logins? We're already time-stamping every record we bring in individually. Why is tech services singled out for individual logins?
In SWAN, traditionally, there's been very few full cataloging libraries and very few staff who do it. So we're making special logins for them anyway because they have more permissions, and it just seemed like sort of a decent idea to do it that way. Originally, I thought that there might be more customizations per login, which didn't really happen, but we could if we wanted to because they're separate. But I mean, we could have made them cataloger 1, cataloger 2, or something like that, and we just chose to do the person's name.
Well, this feels a little big brother, so I was curious what you were doing with those individual logins and why we were being singled out in other departments.
You're not being singled out, you're being honored. You got your certificate, you have your special login.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly don't track
I mean,
it.
we would be happier with generic, to be totally honest. The reason we had individuals was that the SWAN cataloging libraries wanted those at the time. So Scott, you may have additional insight
Well, she asked me
into
this
this.
before, and because I didn't, this is something that was, established before I started, and I just sort of accepted it without thinking about it. I can assure you that it's not a Big Brother issue, because I would be that Big Brother, and I'm not doing that.
And why
I'll
did
do
they
it.
want individual, why did the cataloging libraries want individual logins?
It's possible, as Dave was saying, it was about customization, which then was not taken advantage of fully.
Yeah.
This might be legacy from our Millennium days.
I think it was also because that login gets additional access above text secret. So I don't know why it had to be this name, but that login does have an additional access.
Okay.
That text secret does not.
So
I want to rethink why it's necessary.
We will talk and get an answer by Friday, but if you guys would prefer generics for cataloging, I think now's the time for us to discuss this and decide prior to go live. So
Text service is super.
Yeah.
Well, consider, I mean, if there was some sort of issue with some cataloging work that was done, I mean, we would at least know which library did it. There's no way
But
to
you
do it.
already know that because we have to individually.
Right. So let's say Donner's Group did something, just as an example. We know who the catalogers are there. It's not like it's a mystery.
Yeah.
So what difference does it make if the login is personal or not?
Yeah, that's my argument.
Okay.
But if it wasn't personal, we would still know.
Yeah.
So, well, why does it bother you that it has a personal name? I guess I don't
It just seems
understand.
unnecessary. Why the extra work?
Yeah, what are you planning on doing?
Well, I'm gonna start thinking of something really quick.
I have to
Everybody log in
make-
as somebody else, you know?
This bid is too radical.
I have to make special logins anyway, so it's not, doesn't bother me.
So we did get a comment online stating that also not all tech services staff are authorized to bring in the OCLC records, which is why those individual logins were created. Again, why they're tied to name.
Oh,
That
yeah,
doesn't really
Donner's
answer
Grove
that.
probably has a dozen tech services staff or something, but only one person actually does the overlays and whatever else, so.
All right, keep going through your questions.
Reports, cataloging reports for April, when we freeze, the last day we'll catalog is April 17th. Will I get my monthly cataloging report from Link for those 2 weeks?
Yes.
And when will I get it? Will I get it at the end of the month? Or
When do you usually get it? End of the month?
I usually get it usually is in my box first day of the month. But I didn't know if you're closing things down.
Things won't be closed down. Those are just statistical reports, not updating reports. Yeah, any like statistical monthly reports will continue to run
Okay,
through
so May
end of
1st
April.
it'll be
Yeah,
okay.
but I'll note that.
Okay, another question?
I think I need it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
I have a couple of questions. For the libraries that do the patron auto renewals, I believe we're going to get reports that identify those patrons, correct? Will the expiration dates be automatic? Or is that?
Yes, we are working with Cersei Dynex on that to transfer the current report that does that in Link over to SWAN. That's on our agenda for Friday's conversation.
And then one other question about email bounce backs when the email doesn't work.
Yes, I'll take that. We are working on a solution for that. And then ideally, when those occur, it'll be forwarded to your 3-letter alias address. So 3-letter code, it notices that's one library setnet and everything associated with that. So we're working on that. That's also a custom solution that kind of related to the work that we're doing with the patron lookup. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got another one. Is there any documentation or a flow chart of some sort for how you're handling patron records that patrons that exist in 2 or even all 3 of the systems when they get merged? Like, for example, I'm a Wheaton Public Library card holder, I exist as a VP staff account in Link, as a current reciprocal patron in SWAN, and probably an expired reciprocal patron in Magic. Is there, what's the procedure for how you're merging people like that?
Okay. The procedure is that, first of all, the only duplicates allowed in the system would be a patron account and a staff account, because we know people wear two hats. They are a patron in one community, they are a staff member at another library. If we're talking strictly patron accounts, the data loaders have been given the barcode prefixes of all of the Link and Magic and SWAN libraries, and that becomes the home library. So if there is a patron that is a reciprocal borrower now in SWAN, a reciprocal borrower now in Magic, but their home library is a Link library, when those records come in, assuming that the barcode is the same on all three, which it should be if we're registering patrons correctly, what will happen is the Link patron becomes the authority record, because that is the ownership library, and all of the checkouts and bills and other things are merged as transactions to that one patron record.
In this gentleman's example, he's a standalone patron.
Right.
So
my home library is none of the three.
Right, so if you're a home library, if you're a reciprocal borrower in Aurora, and you have a record in both Link and Magic and potentially SWAN, you're going to come across as a reciprocal borrower, a non-SWAN RB, and you will be owned by the ILL agency, not by any Link or Magic or SWAN library agency. So yes, data loaders have all of that, and from the samples you all have given us in testing, it has shown that that logic has been applied in records coming over.
And he'll still have his Villa Park employee card.
Correct. Yeah.
Dawne, what about schools?
There's still going to be matching on barcode, so your barcodes are all unique, so there's a good chance that what's going to happen is your student barcode is going to be different than their public library barcode. So right, that is another good example where you could have a duplicate. Your academic library card and your public library card.
Question in the back, I see Vicky's got her hand up.
And I just wanted to let everyone know, I misspoke, patrons cannot see their place in the whole queue from their price. Only staff can see it, so the answer to that question is, don't tell your patrons where they are.
They're gonna ask.
They always ask, but just from my experience at Surf Desk, we said, there are a lot of holes and there are a lot of different ways that it gets filled, so just gets filled as it goes. We never really told them what number they were, because then that's exactly what happened. People got upset.
Well, you can see your place with e-stuff, e-books and e-audiobooks. It tells you your place in like Hoopla or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, but not in Enterprise.
No.
Couple hands went up, okay.
So data testing concludes on April 12th, but will we still have access to the test database to go in and kind of work on some interlibrary loan procedures while we're in OCLC briefs?
Yeah, the test database will go down the 27th because we don't want that accidental connection or offline, but we plan to have it up and available up until that offline starts. You just won't get homework anymore. Maybe. Vicki, are you going to keep giving homework?
Not me. Maybe Claudia.
I saw another hand shoot up and went back down.
All right, I'll throw you another one. So we run a little satellite library location at one of our middle schools one afternoon a week, and we send a staff member over there with a laptop, and they they don't like mobile circ, they like to have the real workflows. So currently I've just got a VPN from that laptop back to us and some NAT magic to, get the Cersei connection to work. Is that type of setup something that would be supported under SWAN rules, or is there a way that we can, for us to make that happen?
Yeah, if you're currently running the VPN back to your library to your staff network, then that should be fine. We've done that previously.
Okay.
We obviously prefer mobile circ, just because that's a little bit more secure, but the VPN works just fine.
Any online?
Yeah. Do existing circ rules for materials change to new circ rules when attached to a customer account during the circ freeze? So I asked for clarification on that. Items that were checked out like the week before the current circ rule may have been a 3-week checkout, but the new circ rule is a 2-week checkout. Does that change when things are brought over, or will they retain the existing circ rule?
We've had this question before, haven't we? Sam and Crystal?
Yeah.
And the answer is?
If the new circulation rule, so if you previously had 3 weeks and actually chose to change to 2 weeks, it will then be 2 weeks with SWAN. If it was 3 weeks with 5 renewals, for example, there were 2 renewals, the data gets migrated. That was another question we had, how many renewals would user then have? They would have 3. So if the parameters have wholly changed, then it will change. If they stayed the same, then it would stay the same.
But isn't it true, Sam, that the circ rule applied to the transaction will go through the mapping, but that will not change the due date to say, oh, wait, now I got another due date and another new set of rules. So your due date is your due date at the moment it was checked out. But the circ rule that is in the transaction history log to determine what was applied is mapped at the time all those transactions are brought over. And basically the patron doesn't know or care what their circ rule is.
They just care about the due date.
Any other online? Any other in the room?
I just want to clarify the answer to the question we had earlier. We were guessing that if you do not have access to Wizard, you will not be able to see its properties, and that is definitely true.
Yay.
So do your screenshots before the freeze. It's modified Wizard.
All right.
Everybody feeling good?
Good.
Oh,
Got my
I have
gavel.
questions. So I heard an answer that you folks are recreating our cold photos, cold wrappers, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I should just not worry about that, correct?
If you want to test them out on the test server, while I was doing Link, Michael's doing Magic, the Link ones should be finished.
They should be finished now?
Yeah, so if you try it
Magic ones are
today,
finished.
are they, okay, so if you try to check in today, it should print your whole wrapper as it's supposed to be, but if it's not, then open a ticket and let us know so that we can get it configured.
And that is a good thing to test because some of your hold wrappers might have been pulling in user data that is now different, is coming from a different field. So you pulled over existing hold.
Yeah, so I went through the hold wrappers that were configured on the Link server. And in Link, you can change those locally. So if you've done that, I found somebody that had a footer about a program in September on their hold wrapper, or maybe it was on the checkout receipt. I'm sure that's not current. So if you change your receipts extensively locally within your library, chances are they're not configured correctly now because I can't see what you've done locally. So if you do that, open a ticket and let us know what your receipts are supposed to look like.
So we just send you our configuration?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And just in case it's not clear, going forward, you won't be able to configure your own receipts in SWAN.
Dave will do that for
Hold
you.
wrapper receipts?
Right. Hold wrappers, hold slips, transit slips, checkout receipts, and payment receipts. All those things fall under the umbrella of receipts in the Wizard properties, and you won't be able to change those yourself.
What about self-checks?
Self-checks are out of our,
Separate, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
out of our realm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good
It
question.
doesn't mean you can't have them customized. We
Right.
just want every label produced in the library to be the same, and that we can troubleshoot where there's a problem. So they're artist-type properties. Dave loves customizing labels.
He does, he actually enjoys it. He told me so.
I like taking advantage of what the system can do. So when everyone's exactly the same, I feel like we're not
Pushing
doing
the
it right.
envelope?
Yeah. Aaron's got an itchy trigger finger.
I worked for 6 years in an auction house, so the gavel feels good in my hand.
Going once.
Going once. Going twice. Sold. CMA 1.
Yeah.
We'll hang around in front if you got other questions. Thanks, everybody online.